Welcome to our story, family. I am so glad you are here. Please follow my story until the end and leave a comment telling me what city you are watching from. The only thing Mike asked of me when he said his final goodbyes was, please do not go to the property in Cape Cod, Emily, promise me. He squeezed my hand with the very last bit of strength he had left his eyes begging me. I promised him I would not. I always respected his wishes even when curiosity was absolutely eating me alive. But a few years after his passing, that curiosity finally won, and what I found on that property would change my life forever. Now I understand exactly why my husband wanted to keep me far away from there. 17 years of marriage to Mike ended in a hospital bed after a massive stroke that nobody could have ever predicted. At 58 years old, I found myself a widow with a daughter in college and an overwhelming feeling of emptiness that felt like it would never end. While I was organizing his affairs, I discovered that there was so much more to my husband than I ever knew. It was just a regular Tuesday when his lawyer, Mr. Davis, called me into his office. 2 months had already passed since the funeral. Life was continuing its cruel, normal course, while I was still trying to figure out how to breathe without Mike around. Emily, I have something I need to give you, Mr. Davis said, sliding a small box and an envelope across his polished wooden desk. Mike left very specific instructions that this should be given to you only after his passing. The box contained a heavy antique key with a metal keychain shaped like an olive leaf. The envelope had my name on it in Mike's unmistakable handwriting. What is this key for? I asked, turning it over and over in my fingers. It is for a property in Cape Cod. Your husband bought it about 4 years ago, but he left explicit instructions that you were only to find out about it after his death. My heart was pounding. Mike did not own any other properties besides our home. He never once mentioned a retirement house on the coast. It is called the Ocean Estate, the lawyer continued. Apparently, it was the house where Mike spent part of his childhood. He bought it back after many years, even though it had changed hands several times. Wait, this makes absolutely no sense, I interrupted him. Mike always avoided talking about his childhood. Whenever I mentioned Cape Cod, he would tense up and completely change the subject. Why would he ever buy a house out there? Mr. Davis adjusted his glasses. I could not tell you, ma'am, but there is another very important detail. The property has become extremely valuable over the last 2 years. How is that even possible? A massive developer, Horizon Resorts, is building a luxury complex in the area. Your husband's property is strategically located right in the middle of it. They have already made several multi-million-dollar offers for the house. My head was spinning. Mike had never been a wealthy man. We lived comfortably on his engineer salary and my paycheck as a college professor, but we had nothing that would allow him to buy a second home, especially in an area as highly sought after as Cape Cod. And why on earth would he keep it a secret? With trembling fingers, I tore open the envelope. My dearest Emily, if you are reading this, it means I left this world sooner than I expected. Please forgive me for all the secrets I kept from you. The house is all yours now. Over the last 4 years, I transformed that gloomy place from my childhood into something I really hope you find beautiful. I know I made you promise that you would never go there. I am undoing that promise right now. In fact, I am asking you to go there at least once before you decide what to do with the property. In the study of the house, you will find my laptop. The password is the date of our very first date, followed by hope, the word you taught me how to feel all over again. I love you more than I could ever possibly express. Yours, Mike. I pressed the letter tightly against my chest, tears completely blurring my vision. Even in death, Mike still had the power to surprise me. I need to see this place, I said. There is a slight complication, Mr. Davis interrupted. Mike's family is contesting the will. His brother Richard Miller is claiming that Mike was not mentally competent when he purchased the property. That is absolutely absurd. My husband was the most lucid and grounded person I have ever known in my entire life. Even so, they have filed legal appeals. Keeping in mind the current value of the property, this could easily turn into a very messy battle. I slipped the key into my pocket, a sudden wave of determination taking over my entire body. I am going to Cape Cod today. 2 days later, after a very rushed drive across New England, I parked my car right in front of a carved wooden gate with the words, "The Ocean Estate," written in wrought iron. My heart was beating so fast as I turned the key in the lock. The gate swung open with a soft creak, revealing a property that was so much more breathtaking than I'd ever imagined. It was not just some little country cottage. It was a massive stone and wood mansion surrounded by impeccably kept gardens and ancient olive trees. A beautiful stone pathway wound its way through perfect green lawns all the way up to the main entrance. Everything looked brand new, or at least recently renovated. Nothing out here suggested the traumatic childhood that Mike had been so reluctant to talk about. This entire place had been transformed with nothing but love and pure dedication. My husband's hands were in every single detail, even though I never even knew this place existed until right now. My hands were shaking uncontrollably as I put the key into the front door. The lock turned with a very satisfying click, and I stepped right into the secret world of the man I had shared almost 2 decades of my life with. What I saw inside made me grab onto the door frame just to keep myself standing upright. The entryway opened up into a massive double-height living room with a gorgeous stone fireplace. But it was not the architecture that completely took my breath away. It was the paintings. On every single wall, in absolutely every available space, there were paintings of flowers. Not just any flowers, but orchids of every possible type and color you could imagine. My lifelong passion, the one Mike always supported with such quiet affection. I was completely surrounded in a gallery entirely dedicated to my greatest love. And right there, sitting on a table near the window, overlooking the beautiful gardens, was a silver laptop with a single white orchid resting gently on top of it. Before I could even take another step, the loud sound of tires crunching on the gravel outside announced that I was no longer alone. Through the window, I watched a black SUV pull up and stop right behind my car. 3 men stepped out, all of them sharing Mike's unmistakable facial features, the exact same straight nose, the exact same almond-shaped eyes. The Miller clan had officially arrived, and judging by the severe, angry expressions on their faces, they were definitely not here to welcome the grieving widow to her newly discovered property. The men walked up to the house with the extreme confidence of people who felt like they owned the place. I quickly slammed the front door shut, my heart racing out of my chest. I watched them through the side window as they stopped on the front porch, whispering amongst themselves. Before the oldest one, a gray-haired version of Mike started banging loudly on the door. "Emily, we know you are in there. We need to talk." His voice had the exact same tense tone that Mike used to get whenever he was nervous. I stayed completely silent, slowly backing away from the door. Mike's vague warnings about his family were always so emphatic. Now, standing right here, facing them, my gut instinct was screaming at me to be careful. The loud banging started again, much more insistent this time. "Emily, I am Richard Miller, Mike's older brother. These are my brothers Jason and Matthew. We are here about the property." Of course they were not here for Mike or to meet the woman their brother had loved for 17 whole years. They were only here for the house that was suddenly worth millions of dollars. I looked over at the laptop sitting on the table. The answers I was desperately looking for might be right in there, not out there with those strangers on the porch. Completely ignoring the increasingly aggressive knocking, I walked over to the table and typed in the password. October 12th, 1996. Hope. The screen immediately sprang to life, opening up a digital folder titled For Emily. Inside there were hundreds of video files, each one chronologically dated starting the very day after the funeral and stretching a whole year into the future. With trembling hands, I clicked on the very first one. Mike's face filled the entire screen. It was not the pale, emaciated face from his final days in the hospital, but a healthy, vibrant face clearly recorded many months prior. "Hello, my love." He smiled that same crooked smile that always used to melt my heart. "If you are watching this, it means I am gone and you actually came to the Ocean Estate despite all my years of begging you not to. I really should have guessed that you would not be able to resist, especially after Mr. Davis told you all about the house." A huge lump formed right in my throat. Even now, he just knew me so perfectly well. "I have recorded a video for every single day of your first year without me. I wanted to give you a year of company while you process your grief, a year of explaining absolutely everything I should have told you while I was still alive." He briefly looked down, then looked right back at me with pure determination, starting with exactly why I bought the house that I once swore I would never set foot in again. Outside, the loud knocking had finally stopped. Through the window, I saw the men walking back to their SUV, pulling out stacks of papers and talking to each other with very severe expressions. Mike continued talking on the screen. 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with a brain aneurysm. It was a ticking time bomb that I inherited from my father. The doctors gave me anywhere from 2 to 5 years to live. I made the choice not to tell you or Sarah. I did not want any pity, and I definitely did not want our final years together to be lived under the dark shadow of death. His eyes softened so much. I just wanted to live fully with you right up until the very end, not slowly die right in front of you. A massive wave of shock and anger flooded through me. He hid his diagnosis. He made huge medical decisions completely without me. He denied me the chance to prepare myself to consciously cherish every single one of our final moments together. "I know you are so angry right now," he said, acting exactly as if he were reading my mind. "You have every right to be mad. But I really hope you understand that I made that choice out of love, not out of cowardice." The men outside were now making phone calls, pacing angrily around the driveway, with the frustrated energy of someone being denied what they felt they were owed. When I first got my diagnosis, I decided to use whatever time I had left to create something truly meaningful for you. You have always loved orchids. You always talked about having a space just for yourself to grow them someday. So I found the absolute last place anyone would ever expect me to go. The house I left when I was 18 years old, swearing I would never go back. He leaned closer into the camera. "What my brothers do not know is that I legally bought the house from my father right before he died. The old man was completely bankrupt after years of heavy gambling and drinking. He sold it to me for a fraction of what it was worth. He was desperate for cash, and he made me swear that I would not tell my brothers who still fully thought they were going to inherit it someday. That completely explained the legal challenge. They truly believed they had rights to a property that Mike had legitimately purchased. The house was in total ruins when I bought it, Emily, just like my childhood here. But this time, I had the resources to transform it. Every single business trip over the last 4 years, I was actually right here, overseeing the renovations, building something beautiful just for you." Outside, the brothers were marching right back up to the front door. This time, Richard was pressing a document flat against the window glass for me to see. Was it some kind of court order? "My brothers are going to come for it," Mike continued in the video, his expression hardening. "They never even wanted the house until last year when the whole luxury resort project started up. Suddenly, the worthless property they used to mock me for buying turned into an absolute gold mine. They will try absolutely anything to take it away from you." One of the brothers was back on his phone again, his expression looking completely triumphant as he hung up the call. "In the bottom drawer of this table there is a blue folder with all the legal documents you will ever need. The house is unquestionably yours. I made 100% sure of that." Mike's face softened again. "But Emily, whether you decide to keep it or sell it is entirely your choice. I built this place for you. I filled it with absolute beauty for you, but I do not want it to become a heavy burden for you." A police cruiser was slowly making its way up the long driveway. The brothers watched it approach with very smug, satisfied expressions on their faces. "One last thing," Mike said. "In the greenhouse right behind the house, you will find the rare orchid collection I spent years cultivating. The staff I hired will continue to take good care of them. Whether you are living here or not, they are my final gift to you, along with the financial means to keep enjoying them." The video ended freezing right on Mike's smiling face, just as the loud knocking on the front door started up once again. It sounded much more authoritative this time. "Mrs. Miller, County Sheriff's Department. We are going to need you to open the door, please." With a very deep sigh, I closed the laptop, grabbed the blue folder out of the bottom drawer, and walked over to face whatever was coming next. Just as my hand reached for the doorknob, my cell phone started ringing. It was Sarah, my daughter, calling all the way from New York. I hesitated for a second, then finally answered it. "Sarah, this is really not a good time." "Mom," she said, her voice completely tense with irritation. "Why did my uncles just call me offering me a huge payout if I helped them contest the will? What on earth is going on?" So they had already reached out to my daughter. That realization ignited something incredibly fierce and protective deep inside of me. They were not just coming after me, they were actively trying to manipulate my grieving child. "I will explain absolutely everything to you later. I promise," I said, watching the police officer chatting with the brothers outside. "But Sarah, please do not sign anything. Do not agree to a single thing. Those men are not our friends." "Mom, if there is serious money involved, this is not about the money." I interrupted her, totally surprising myself with how firm my voice sounded. "This is about what your father actually wanted. Please just trust me." After a long moment of silence, she let out a heavy sigh. "Okay, but you need to call me back the second you can." I hung up the phone and pulled the front door wide open to face a young county officer, Deputy Vance, who was flanked by all three Miller brothers. Their expressions ranged from total smugness to open hostility. "Mrs. Miller, I am Deputy Vance. These gentlemen here have a court order requesting a full inspection of the property as part of an ongoing inheritance dispute." I smiled very calmly, channeling all the inner strength that Mike always admired in me. "Of course, officer. But first, I really think you should take a look at this." I handed him the thick blue folder containing all of Mike's paperwork. My husband anticipated this exact situation. Richard took a huge step forward, waving his hand dismissively. "Family disputes are always so complicated, officer. My sister-in-law is understandably very emotional and confused right now." "Actually," I interrupted him sharply, "I am neither emotional nor confused. I am a widow standing on a piece of property that legally belongs to me, currently facing 3 complete strangers who just happen to share my late husband's DNA." I turned my attention right back to the police officer. "I would really appreciate it if you could review those documents before allowing anyone to step foot inside my home." The officer took the folder, keeping his expression completely neutral as he started looking through the pages. The Miller brothers exchanged worried glances with each other, their arrogant confidence visibly fading away. I thought about Mike's video about the heavy secret he carried just to spare Sarah and me from unnecessary suffering, and about the magnificent gift he spent his final years creating. Whatever twisted game his brothers were trying to play, I was fully determined not to lose the very last tangible expression of my husband's love without a massive fight. The officer looked up from the paperwork. His whole expression had changed. "These all seem to be perfectly in order, ma'am. You have a clear property deed transfer, notarized statements, and certified bank records showing the original purchase." He turned around to face the angry brothers. "Gentlemen, I do not see any legal grounds to force an inspection here today. This looks like a matter you need to take up in civil court." Richard's face flushed bright red with pure anger. "This is completely absurd. That woman has absolutely no right to be here." "That woman I chimed in very calmly, is Mike Miller's wife, and I have every single right to be standing right here. As the brothers reluctantly retreated back to their big SUV, closely followed by the apologizing police officer, I felt this very strange mix of deep loss and new discovery. The husband that I thought I knew completely inside and out had kept so many secrets. Some were incredibly painful, while others were astonishingly beautiful. Now I was faced with a major choice. Should I just retreat to the boring safety of my old life, or should I dive headfirst into this unexpected legacy and the intense battle that came right along with it? I locked the front door, walked back over to the table, and opened the laptop right back up. Tomorrow's video was already waiting for me, and along with it, more hidden pieces of the man I loved, the man I was only just now starting to fully understand. Outside, the Miller brothers might have lost this little skirmish, but the angry looks on their faces as they drove away made one thing perfectly clear. The war for the Ocean estate had only just begun. I spent that entire night alone in Mike's house, or rather, our house, completely surrounded by all the proof of his secret labor of love. Sleep completely avoided me, my mind just buzzing nonstop with all these crazy revelations. The fatal illness he kept hidden, the beautifully transformed house, his brother's fierce determination to claim it, and the hundreds of video messages just waiting for me on that laptop. Right at sunrise, I finally explored the entire property properly for the very first time. The main house was an absolute masterpiece of renovation, blending the original rustic elements with sleek modern comfort. Every single room reflected such careful consideration of my personal tastes. From the gorgeous library stocked with first editions of my favorite books, all the way to the cozy reading nook overlooking the garden, which was absolutely perfect for chilly autumn mornings. But it was the greenhouse that truly took my breath away. Just like Mike promised in his video, an incredibly stunning collection of orchids completely filled the glass space. Some of them were so incredibly rare that I had only ever seen them in specialized gardening books. A vibrant blue cattle, a flower that is almost impossible to find, was blooming proudly right in the center, like the queen of the room. "Good morning, ma'am." The voice totally startled me. A middle-aged woman suddenly appeared from behind the thick plants, holding a small water sprayer. "I am Mrs. Higgins. Your husband hired me to take care of the orchids." "Emily Miller." I replied, extending my hand to greet her, even though I highly suspect she already knew exactly who I was. She smiled very warmly at me. "Mr. Miller talked about you so much during all of his visits. He always said you had this magical touch with plants that he could never even hope to match." "Did you know my husband well?" Mrs. Higgins hesitated for a second. "About as well as he ever let anyone know him, I suppose. He was out here at least once a month for the last 4 years, personally overseeing absolutely everything." That sounded exactly like Mike. He was always so methodical, so attentive to detail, always preferring to just do things himself rather than hand the work off to someone else. "That beautiful blue cattleya right over there." Mrs. Higgins continued, pointing straight at the orchid I had just been admiring. "He spent almost 2 whole years searching for it. He said it reminded him of one you saw at a flower show a long time ago and could never forget." My heart physically ached. It was the big orchid exhibition at the Botanical Gardens in Boston 10 years ago. I had commented on that specific flower only one single time, and Mike remembered it all these years later. "Did he ever mention anything to you about his health?" I asked her hesitantly. A dark shadow crossed right over Mrs. Higgins' face. "Not directly, no, but during the last 6 months he pushed himself so much harder. He worked incredibly long hours, exactly like a man racing against a ticking clock." Hearing that confirmation hit me hard, but it also explained the very rushed, frantic energy I sensed in Mike during his final months. I had just blamed it all on work stress, never once imagining that he was out here creating all of this while knowing his time on Earth was running out. His brothers were out here yesterday. I casually mentioned, carefully watching her reaction. Her face instantly hardened. They have been aggressively snooping around ever since Horizon Resorts announced their big project. Suddenly, they are extremely interested in the old family house they have not bothered to visit in decades. She adjusted a small valve on the irrigation system before continuing. What can I possibly say about those men? Richard is the oldest. He runs a big investment firm up in Chicago. He always treated Mike like he was doing him a huge favor just by acknowledging him. Jason is the middle brother, a slick lawyer, very good with his words. Matthew is the youngest one, always hiding away in Richard's shadow. She shook her head in disgust. When Mike finally came back here to buy the property, they viciously mocked him for wasting his money on such a rundown dump. That is until the luxury resort started making their plans. All of this perfectly matched the tiny fragments Mike had shared with me over the years. His very difficult childhood, his desperate escape to college, his stubborn reluctance to ever talk about his family. They will definitely be back, I said, talking more to myself than to Mrs. Higgins. I am sure they will. She nodded. But Mr. Miller prepared for exactly that. He was always thinking several steps ahead of everyone else. Once I got back inside the house, I forced myself to eat a little something before opening up the laptop for the day's video. Mike popped up on the screen, sitting right in what I now recognized as the house's gorgeous library. "Good morning, my love. I really hope you slept well in our brand new home." He smiled that same crooked smile that I miss so much it physically hurt my chest. "Today, I want to show you something incredibly special." The camera violently shook as he walked through the house, heading straight down a long hallway I had not explored yet and stopping dead in front of a locked door. "This room is just for you. The key is in the top drawer of the nightstand in the master bedroom, the antique silver one with the little orchid engraved on it." I hit pause on the video, practically ran to the master bedroom, and found the silver key sitting exactly where he described it. Following Mike's path from the video, I located the very discreet wooden door all the way at the end of the east wing. The key turned so smoothly. I pushed the door wide open and let out a loud gasp. A fully equipped, beautiful art studio completely filled the large corner room. It was bathed in perfect natural light pouring in from the huge floor-to-ceiling windows. There were wooden easels, blank canvases, tubes of paint, fine brushes. Absolutely everything an artist could ever dream of was arranged in there with such loving precision. I had not painted a single thing in 15 whole years. Right after art school, I completely abandoned my artistic dreams so I could teach literature just to keep us financially afloat while Mike was building his big career and so we could raise Sarah. Over the many years, the idea of someday turned into a very distant dream and then eventually into a bittersweet memory of a path I never took. The video kept playing Mike's voice, pulling my attention right back to the laptop I had carried in there with me. "You gave up so much for us, Emily. Your painting was the very first big sacrifice you made. Even though you never once complained about it, I always promised myself that I would give it back to you someday." Oh, hot tears totally blurred my vision as I looked around the studio. I saw the expensive professional materials, the thick reference books perfectly organized on the shelves, and the huge windows perfectly angled to capture the best afternoon light. "There is just one more thing," Mike continued. "Look inside the cabinet right under the window bench." I slowly walked over to the soft padded bench near the large window overlooking the garden, which was now glowing bright gold in the morning sunlight. Right underneath it, built completely into the wall, was a hidden cabinet that I definitely would have missed if I had not been specifically told to look for it. Tucked inside was a large flat archival storage box. With badly shaking hands, I lifted the heavy lid off the box and immediately fell straight to my knees in pure shock. It was my old paintings, dozens and dozens of them. It was absolutely all the original artwork I created back in college, beautiful pieces that I genuinely thought had been lost forever during all of our moves over the years. Mike had carefully preserved them, fiercely protected them, and secretly kept them safe for 15 long years until he could finally return them to me in this perfect little space. Sitting right on top was a small canvas that I instantly recognized as my final project right before graduation. It was a self-portrait of a very young woman looking out toward the future, her bright eyes shining with so much possibility. Mike had specifically asked to keep that one the very day I finished it. Clipped right to the frame was a small handwritten note. "She is still in there, Emily, the wonderful woman who used to paint with so much passion and grand vision. I gave you the space. The rest is entirely up to you." I pressed the sweet note hard against my chest, completely overwhelmed by deep love and crushing loss in equal measure. Mike had truly seen me. He saw me in ways that I had not even allowed myself to be seen in so many years. The loud crunching sound of vehicles driving on the gravel outside violently yanked me right out of that emotional moment. Peeking out from the studio window, I saw two big SUVs rolling up the driveway. The familiar black one belonged to the Miller brothers, and pulling up right behind it was a silver one that I instantly recognized. Sarah had arrived, and judging by the very confident way she stepped out of her SUV and walked right up to her uncles, it looked like they had already started working their terrible magic on her. My sweet daughter, Mike's daughter, with her dark hair and my stubborn attitude, was happily smiling and shaking hands with a bunch of uncles she had never even met before today. Any tiny bit of fragile peace I had managed to find in Mike's posthumous gifts totally evaporated in the face of this brand new complication. The ugly battle for the Ocean estate had just gotten a whole lot more personal. I watched through the thick glass window as Sarah exchanged very friendly greetings with her uncles, her body language totally open and receptive to them. At 21 years old, our daughter had her father's highly analytical mind and my fierce determination, but she completely lacked Mike's endless patience and my careful caution. She was always so incredibly quick to form strong opinions and very slow to ever change them. My phone buzzed in my pocket with a text message from her. "I am here with Uncle Richard and the others. Coming inside now. We really need to talk." Uncle Richard. They had known each other for less than a single day, and she was already desperately claiming a tight family connection. I tucked Mike's note safely into my pocket, locked the art studio behind me, and marched down the hall to face this brand new alliance. They walked right inside without even knocking. Sarah was using her natural familiarity as my daughter, and the three brothers were following right behind her like hungry wolves, trailing a completely unsuspecting guide. "Mom." Sarah gave me a very brief hug, then quickly pulled away her big eyes, excitedly scanning the impressive living room. "This place is absolutely incredible. Why did Dad never tell us about it?" Before I could even open my mouth to answer her, Richard took a big step forward, his physical resemblance to Mike painfully obvious. "Emily, I really think we got off on the completely wrong foot yesterday. We were totally caught off guard by your sudden arrival, just like you were surprised by ours." His fake conciliatory tone completely failed to match his cold, calculating gaze. Right beside him, Jason and Matthew maintained very carefully neutral expressions, although Jason was tightly clutching a thick leather folder that undoubtedly contained a bunch of legal documents. "Sarah," I said, completely ignoring Richard standing there. "I thought we specifically agreed that you would not interact with your father's brothers until we actually had a chance to sit down and talk." She blushed just a tiny bit. "They called me again early this morning with a very reasonable proposal. I figured I should at least hear them out in person." She lifted her chin in total defiance. "Besides, they are my family, too." "Family that you literally did not even know existed until yesterday," I gently reminded her. "Only because Dad kept them so far away from us." She snapped right back, "Just like he hid this totally incredible place from us. Do you not find that a little strange? What else was he hiding from us?" Her sharp question hit very uncomfortably close to the crazy revelations in Mike's videos. Your father had extremely complicated relationships with his brothers, I said very carefully. He had his own valid reasons for the heavy distance he kept. Richard made a very dismissive hand gesture. That is ancient history. Brothers fight all the time, especially in difficult, stubborn families like ours. The only thing that matters right now is moving forward together. Exactly. Sarah nodded with the intense seriousness of someone who completely believed she was being perfectly reasonable. Uncle Richard explained absolutely everything to me. This big house has been in the Miller family for many generations. Dad bought it from Grandpa Miller, but it was always meant to be shared equally among the brothers eventually. I had to bite my tongue to repress a heavy sigh. And your sudden deep interest in the property has absolutely nothing to do with the massive luxury resort being built right next door, I asked him very softly. Jason stepped right up and popped open his leather folder. The real estate situation is just one tiny aspect of the very complex legal landscape here. We have put together a very fair settlement offer that honors Mike's final wishes, while properly acknowledging the Miller family's historic claim to the estate. We are more than willing to be extremely generous here, Richard added, placing a fake fatherly hand right on Sarah's shoulder. 1/3 for you, Emily, 1/3 for Sarah, and the final third divided up among us brothers. Everybody wins. Sarah looked at me expectantly, very clearly already sold on their ridiculous proposal. It really makes sense, Mom. We do not need this massive place. We could sell it all, walk away with millions of dollars, and Dad's family actually stays together. Your father specifically left this beautiful property to me, I said, staring Richard directly in the eyes. Not to you, not to his brothers. Out of pure confusion and misplaced sentimentality, Richard smoothly countered. Mike was simply not thinking clearly at all in his final years. A hot flash of pure anger shot straight through my body. My husband was perfectly, absolutely lucid right up until the very day he died. Then why all the crazy secrecy? Matthew spoke up for the very first time. His voice was much softer than his brother's, but it was no less sharp. Why fiercely hide the purchase of the property from his own wife and daughter? Why make all these super elaborate secret arrangements with his lawyer? Those are definitely not the normal actions of a man who is thinking rationally. I thought about the hidden videos, the perfectly renovated house, the gorgeous art studio. Absolutely none of those things suggested any kind of confusion or impaired judgment whatsoever. Mom, Sarah said, her voice dropping much softer now, I know this is incredibly difficult. Dad left us, and now we are randomly discovering all these crazy secrets. But this proposal just makes pure financial sense. We would both be financially secure for the rest of our lives. The front door suddenly swung open right behind them, and Mrs. Higgins appeared, her face looking extremely worried. Is everything all right in here, Mrs. Miller? I saw all the cars pulling up. The brothers turned around, looking visibly annoyed by the sudden interruption. Richard narrowed his cold eyes at her. This is a private family matter. Mrs. Higgins is my employee, I stated extremely firmly. She is more than welcome in my home. Actually, Jason quickly intervened, her employment status is currently among the disputed assets pending the final resolution of our legal claim. Mrs. Higgins did not back down even a single inch. Mr. Miller hired me personally. He made me promise him that I would take good care of the place and watch over Emily if anything ever happened to him. We will be reviewing absolutely all employee contracts. Richard sneered with pure disdain. I had officially heard way more than enough. I think it is time for all of you to leave my house. I glared directly at the three brothers. Then I significantly softened my gaze as I turned back to face Sarah. Except you, of course. You are always welcome to stay here. Are you seriously not even going to consider their amazing offer? Sarah asked me in total disbelief. I will gladly review any written proposal with my own personal lawyer, I replied calmly, but I absolutely will not be pressured inside my own home. Richard's fake conciliatory mask finally slipped right off, completely revealing the totally ruthless businessman lurking underneath. This piece of land is easily worth tens of millions of dollars with the resort project coming in. We can either do this amicably or we can make things extremely difficult for you. Is that a threat? I asked him, sounding way calmer than I actually felt inside. It is just a harsh reality check, he corrected me. You are just a college professor facing a massive legal battle against adversaries with significantly larger financial resources. Mike might have had totally good intentions, but he put you in a completely untenable position here. I thought about the thick blue folder stuffed with his meticulous legal documentation, the hidden videos proving Mike's incredibly lucid planning, the gorgeous property that literally represented his final act of true love. I think my husband knew exactly what he was doing, I said with total calm. Now please get out. Sarah, you are more than welcome to stay for lunch if you want to. She looked so incredibly conflicted, darting her eyes back and forth between me and her brand new uncles. I think I am just going to go with them for now. We have a lot more to discuss. She gave my cheek a very quick kiss. Just think about the offer, Mom, please. I sadly watched them walk away, a horrible feeling of emptiness expanding right in the middle of my chest. In only 24 hours, my sweet daughter had been completely sucked right into the toxic orbit of the very men that Mike spent his entire life avoiding. Mrs. Higgins patiently waited until the shiny cars totally disappeared down the gravel driveway before she finally spoke up. Mrs. Miller, there is something you really need to know. It is something your husband specifically asked me not to mention unless it became absolutely necessary. I slowly turned around to face her, feeling totally mentally exhausted, but I forced myself to pay attention. What is it? It is about the true scope of this massive property and what is actually hidden out here. She made a quick gesture toward the big greenhouse. We better walk. There are some things that definitely should not be discussed inside the main house, where the walls might have ears. As I followed Mrs. Higgins right across the green lawn, the bright morning sun beautifully illuminated the stunning estate that my husband had built in total secret. Whatever crazy revelation was waiting for me next, I was absolutely certain of one thing. Mike had completely anticipated this ugly battle. He had probably even anticipated Sarah's total vulnerability to his brother's sick manipulation. The real question was, had he prepared me enough to actually win a massive fight that I never even knew was coming? Mrs. Higgins led me right past the main greenhouse and headed straight toward an old wooden tool shed that I had not explored yet. Unlike the perfectly renovated structures across the rest of the huge property, this little building completely kept its original, beat-up rustic appearance. It was deliberately left completely unimproved so it would look totally unimportant. Your husband was an extremely careful man, Mrs. Higgins said, pulling out a heavy rusted iron key. After his brothers made their very first visit out here last year, he became even more cautious. They visited here before, I asked. Mike never mentioned a single word about that. Mrs. Higgins nodded very gravely. They showed up totally unannounced the exact second they heard about the new luxury resort project. Your husband was right here on the property, personally overseeing the big construction of your art studio. They actually did not even recognize him at first. He had grown out a really thick beard during his heavy medical treatments. Her super casual mention of Mike's treatments slammed right into me like a massive wave of fresh, terrible pain. While I was innocently teaching my little literature classes, my husband was out here deathly ill, desperately building this beautiful sanctuary while fending off his predatory brothers. What happened next? I asked. He just watched them carefully from a safe distance. Then he quietly left without ever revealing himself to them. That very same night, he made huge changes to the master plans for the estate, starting right here with this. Mrs. Higgins pushed open the creaky door to the shed, revealing a totally ordinary interior. There were basic gardening tools, old equipment, and tiny dust motes dancing in the little rays of sunlight, filtering through the cracks in the wooden walls. Mrs. Higgins moved very confidently right to the back corner of the room, casually shoving several stacked cardboard boxes aside to fully reveal a heavy metal trapdoor built right into the solid concrete floor. Your husband secretly installed this hidden entrance last winter. The construction workers fully thought they were just building a simple wine cellar. She yanked the heavy metal door straight up, revealing a very sturdy set of stairs leading right down into the pitch-black darkness. Right after you. With my intense curiosity completely overpowering my fear, I closely followed Mrs. Higgins right down the steep stairs. At the very bottom, she flipped a light switch, and bright fluorescent lights flickered on, completely revealing a long concrete tunnel stretching out right in front of us. What on earth is this place? Your husband used to call it the vault. I just call it pure genius. The concrete tunnel stretched for about 100 feet before it opened completely up into a massive room packed with tall filing cabinets, a huge table loaded with computer equipment, and wide walls totally covered in detailed maps and printed documents. "Welcome to Mike's personal war room," Mrs. Higgins said with a slight touch of pride in her voice. "This is absolutely everything he secretly collected about his brothers, their shady businesses, and the true hidden value of the Ocean Estate." I walked right over to the closest wall where a highly detailed map displayed not just our property, but the entire surrounding area for several miles. Bright red markings indicated the exact locations of the huge resort project, complete with Mike's handwritten notes about property values, construction phases, and real estate impact. "I do not understand," I said, turning back around to face Mrs. Higgins. Mike actually knew all about the huge resort project. Not in the very beginning, no. He bought this broken-down place to renovate it just for you, plain and simple. But about 2 years ago, when Horizon Resorts started running their preliminary surveys, he quietly hired a top real estate consultant to fully evaluate the impact it would have on the Ocean Estate. Mrs. Higgins pointed a finger right at the big map. They discovered a massive secret that the wealthy developer was desperately trying to keep hidden until all their land purchases were totally finalized. The entire project is actually 3 times larger than what they publicly announced to the press. I studied the big map much more closely quickly, noticing how the bright red marks stretched way beyond the little area the local press had published. Phase 2 of the luxury resort will actually include a huge golf course that requires a massive chunk of the property sitting directly adjacent to ours, Mrs. Higgins continued. They have already bought up almost all the necessary land except for the Ocean Estate. I concluded, finally starting to fully understand his brilliant plan. Your husband double-checked it with 3 totally independent specialists. The highly strategic position of this exact property can completely block their planned expansion. Without it, their entire project instantly loses half of its projected value. So this property is actually even more valuable than his greedy brothers even imagine. Exponentially more valuable. But that is definitely not all. Mrs. Higgins moved over to a tall metal filing cabinet, yanking out a ridiculously thick folder. Mike carefully documented decades of highly questionable business practices committed by all 3 of his brothers. Heavy tax evasion, insider trading, embezzling client funds. There is more than enough solid evidence right here to completely ruin them professionally if it ever came to light. I quickly flipped through the incredibly meticulous documentation, instantly recognizing Mike's highly thorough approach to solving complex problems. There were huge stacks of printed emails, hidden financial records, and sworn affidavits from their former employees. He had secretly built an absolutely airtight legal case against his own brothers. Why on earth would he bother compiling all this extreme protection? Mrs. Higgins sat down right at the table, gesturing for me to take the other empty chair. He knew without a doubt that they would come straight for the house the exact second he was gone. He wanted to make sure you had plenty of ammunition. I thought about Richard's extremely arrogant confidence, Jason's sneaky legal maneuvers, and their incredibly fast work to completely win Sarah over. He totally anticipated absolutely everything. Not everything, Mrs. Higgins said very calmly. He honestly did not expect them to get to your daughter quite so fast. The painful memory of Sarah's apparent total betrayal stung me so badly. They are completely manipulating her with sick half-truths and wild promises of massive wealth, and they are totally playing on her deep grief. They are using her love for her father. Suddenly, they are offering her a fake connection to him through shared blood and history. That is an incredibly powerful pull for a young, grieving girl. She was absolutely right. Sarah was always a total daddy's girl. She completely shared Mike's highly analytical mind and his deep love for complex puzzles. His sudden death left her totally adrift, painfully vulnerable to absolutely anyone who offered her any kind of connection to him. "What do I even do now?" I asked, speaking mostly just to myself. "That totally depends on what you actually want," Mrs. Higgins quickly replied. "You could just sell the whole place and walk away totally rich, but you might be forever estranged from your own daughter. You could fight the brothers in court using all this crazy evidence, which would definitely win you the battle, but it would deeply worsen the ugly family wounds. Or what else? Or you could just do exactly what your husband always did. Think 3 whole steps ahead of them and find the one path that nobody ever expects." I carefully considered that idea as I kept looking around the secret war room. Sitting right on the table was a beautifully framed photograph I had never ever seen before. It was a teenage Mike standing so incredibly proudly right next to a prize-winning orchid. His young face was totally lit up with an innocent, pure joy that I had only very rarely glimpsed in the serious man I ended up marrying. That was the very first cattleya he ever managed to grow, Mrs. Higgins said, noticing my intense focus on the old picture. It was the one single bright spot in his totally miserable childhood here. His older brothers violently destroyed it while Mike was away at college just to hurt his feelings. Another huge piece of the puzzle clicked perfectly into place. Mike's constant, silent support of my deep love for bright flowers and fine art despite totally lacking any personal interest in them himself. The truly magnificent greenhouse and the stunning art studio were not just simple gifts. They were a powerful reclamation of something precious that his cruel brothers had stolen away from him. I picked up the little photograph. A brilliant plan was already starting to form right in my mind. "Mrs. Higgins, does the laptop with Mike's videos actually connect down here?" She nodded her head. "There is a fully secure private network running across the entire property. Your husband completely made sure of that." "That is excellent. I need to watch all the upcoming videos right now. Then I want you to set up a very important meeting for me." "With who?" "First, my daughter. Just her completely alone, far away from the toxic influence of those uncles. Then my lawyer." I stared hard at the massive wall of damning evidence that Mike had secretly compiled against his horrible brothers. "And finally, I think I would really like to have a little chat with the top executives over at Horizon Resorts." Mrs. Higgins fully smiled for the very first time since we stepped down into the hidden bunker. "You are definitely planning something that your husband would highly approve of." "I am planning something that is totally worthy of the amazing man who loved me enough to build all of this," I corrected her, a brand new sense of fierce determination completely firming up my voice. "And I am definitely going to need your help." "Absolutely anything you need, Mrs. Miller." Mrs. Higgins promised me. "Your husband gave me a desperate second chance when nobody else in the world would. I owe absolutely everything to him, and by extension to you." This was just one more beautiful facet of Mike that I had never even known about. His incredibly silent generosity stretched way beyond our immediate little family, totally changing lives that I had never even heard of. As we climbed out of the bunker, very carefully hiding the secret entrance, once again I felt this extremely strange sense of deep connection with my late husband. It was not the crushing grief that had completely dominated the last few weeks, but a true partnership that was somehow actively continuing way beyond death. He had left me not just a huge piece of property and solid material security, but the actual tools and hidden knowledge to forge my very own path. The Miller brothers fully believed they were facing off against some naive, grieving widow who was absolutely no match for them. They had absolutely no idea what was coming for them. Over the next 48 hours, I barely slept a single wink. Totally fueled by pure determination and the growing clarity of my master plan, I watched an entire week's worth of Mike's secret videos in just one single night. Each one revealed so much more of his brilliant strategy and the sheer depth of his incredible foresight. They will definitely try to divide and conquer, he warned me in one of the recordings, speaking exactly as if he were looking directly at my current situation. Richard will totally be the friendly face. Jason will be the scary legal threat. Matthew will be the creepy silent observer. And they will definitely target Sarah. She is the absolute easiest path to completely destabilize your solid position. In another video, he actually held up confidential documents from the wealthy developer that he had secretly obtained through quiet contacts down at the county office. Horizon Resorts is absolutely determined to keep Phase 2 of the project a total secret until all the necessary land is fully secured. If they find out that we already know about the massive golf course before they even try to buy us out, our negotiating power instantly triples. Fully armed with Mike's brilliant ideas and my own rapidly growing understanding of the situation, I set up a time to meet with Sarah at a little coffee shop right in the middle of New York, totally far away from the horrible influence of the Miller brothers and the heavy emotional pull of the beautiful sanctuary Mike had built. She showed up 15 minutes late, already acting incredibly defensive before she even managed to sit down. I really cannot stay for very long. Uncle Richard is taking me to meet some big investors later this afternoon. Uncle Richard, I repeated very softly. You guys have gotten incredibly close in just 3 days. She blushed hard. They have actually been extremely kind and welcoming to me, which is a lot more than I can say for you right now. You are totally treating Dad's own family like they are the enemy. I took a very slow sip of my coffee, picking my next words incredibly carefully. Do you remember that cool narrative theory class you absolutely loved during your first semester of college? The one about how the exact same story completely changes depending entirely on who is telling it. What does that have to do with our situation right now? You have only heard their highly twisted version of this whole story. I am just asking you to please consider that there might be another valid perspective out there. Your father's perspective. Dad is dead. She snapped very sharply, deep pain heavily reflected right across her face. And he obviously did not even trust us enough to tell us about this massive place while he was actually alive. I calmly pulled a digital tablet right out of my purse. Actually, he left something really important for both of us. What is that? Your father secretly made videos, Sarah. Hundreds of them. Beautiful messages to guide us right after he was gone. I carefully handed the tablet over to her, hitting play on the specific video that Mike had clearly labeled for Sarah whenever she needs it. Her face instantly went totally pale. He made videos. He actually knew he was dying. He was officially diagnosed 3 years ago with a terrible brain aneurysm, I said so softly, finally sharing the heavy truth with her. He made the hard choice not to tell us. He really wanted to spare us from having to watch him slowly fade away. That is totally impossible. He would have told me, she whispered, but a massive wave of uncertainty was already heavily leaking into her shaky voice. Just watch the video, Sarah. Please just listen to him. With badly trembling fingers, she pressed play. Mike's handsome face popped right up on the bright screen. He looked so healthy, so vibrant, his warm eyes crinkling up with that very characteristic smile of his. Hello, my brilliant little girl. If you are watching this video right now, then it means I am already gone. And knowing you, you are probably so incredibly angry right now about all the heavy secrets I kept. He laughed very softly. You never, ever liked being kept in the dark about absolutely anything, even when you were just a little kid. Hot tears totally welled up in Sarah's big eyes as her amazing father continued talking. I really should have told you that I was sick. I absolutely should have given you enough time to fully prepare yourself to ask me all of those complex questions that you are always so incredibly good at formulating. But I was being totally selfish. I desperately wanted our final few years together to just be perfectly normal, not completely overshadowed by my horrible diagnosis. I really hope that someday you can find it in your heart to forgive me for making that tough choice. Mike leaned much closer into the camera lens. But there is something else you really need to know. Something awful about my older brothers that I never ever shared with you. Our huge falling out was not just some petty family dispute, Sarah. They completely defrauded me out of my rightful share of the inheritance when I was only 19 years old. They totally used my name on heavily forged legal documents while I was away at college. When I finally found out and threatened to expose them to the police, they threatened to falsely implicate me as a completely willing accomplice. Sarah's shaking hand flew up to tightly cover her mouth, her wide eyes absolutely glued to the screen. I left Cape Cod immediately. I moved straight to Boston. I met your amazing mother. I built a beautiful life from scratch. I raised you. That was more than enough for me. His gentle expression instantly hardened, but my greedy brothers never changed. Whatever lies they are actively feeding you right now, please remember this one thing. They desperately want total control of the old family property, not out of some fake sentimental attachment, but out of pure ugly greed. And they will totally use absolutely anyone, including my own precious daughter, to get exactly what they want. The video finally ended freezing right on Mike's highly concerned face. Sarah sat completely motionless, heavy tears silently streaming right down her pale cheeks. He was actively protecting us, she finally whispered. This entire time, it was about so much more than just his illness. Your uncles are absolutely not the loving family connection they are heavily pretending to be, I confirmed very softly. They are ruthless opportunists who simply see you as the absolute easiest path to exactly what they want. She furiously wiped away her tears, a deep, hot anger quickly replacing the crushing grief in her expression. And they have been totally lying to me this whole time, have they not? About absolutely everything except for the fact that the massive house is actually worth millions of dollars. That part is completely true, but they definitely did not tell you about the entire massive resort project or exactly why our property is so incredibly crucial to the wealthy developer's master plans. Total understanding suddenly lit up her bright eyes. They are actively trying to scam us. Us, I repeated the word instantly, feeling a massive wave of pure hope washing over me. Does that mean you are actually back on my side? Mom, I never actually left your side. I understand now. I totally reassured her, slowly reaching my hand right across the small table to gently squeeze hers. Deep grief makes us all incredibly vulnerable in ways that we can never really foresee. But right now, we urgently need to be so much smarter than them together. Sarah totally straightened up in her chair. her facial expression rapidly shifting from total devastation straight to fierce determination. She looked so incredibly much like Mike in that exact moment that it actually made my heart physically ache. "So what exactly is the plan?" I smiled so big, finally feeling the very first real sense of total confidence since this awful ordeal had originally started. "First, we are going to meet with my own personal lawyer tonight. Not the shady family lawyer that your terrible uncles desperately want us to use, but someone highly recommended by Mr. Davis. Then tomorrow we have a meeting with Horizon Resorts. Why? Because knowledge is power, and now we know something your uncles do not." I showed her the documents from Mike's war room. Exactly how much is the property really worth to the developer? They think they are dealing with an uninformed widow and a naive niece. It is time to show them exactly who they are up against. For the first time since Mike passed away, Haley laughed. It was a sound of genuine amusement. "Dad always said you were the smartest person he had ever met. He said that beneath that quiet literature professor there was a strategist who could outsmart anyone if she was properly motivated." "Did he really say that?" I asked, completely surprised. "All the time." She smiled, wiping away her last few tears. "He also said the biggest mistake anyone could make was underestimating Emily Davis." As we walked out of the coffee shop together, I felt a shift in the dynamics of this battle. The Davis brothers had unknowingly brought us together instead of tearing us apart. They had no idea that their apparent initial success with Haley had only set the stage for their ultimate defeat. That night, with Haley by my side, I presented my complete plan to the lawyer Mike had recommended for this exact scenario. His expression went from professional interest to undisguised admiration. He was slowly grasping the full scope of what I was proposing. "Mrs. Davis," he finally said, "your husband told me I would be surprised by your strategic thinking. He was absolutely right." "My husband," I replied, "was right about a lot of things. That includes his belief in my ability, not just to survive his death, but to emerge stronger from the crucible of grief and betrayal." The Davis brothers arrived at Ocean View Estate exactly when I expected them. They pulled up at 10 in the morning, exactly 3 days after my meeting with Haley. Their black SUV drove up the driveway with the confidence of men who believed victory was a mere formality. Behind them followed a silver sedan that I did not recognize. It was probably their lawyer or financial consultant. I watched them from the study window. I was not wearing the casual clothes they had seen previously. Instead, I wore a tailored suit I had bought specifically for this meeting. Appearance matters when you are orchestrating a turnaround. I fully intended to present myself not as a grieving widow, but as the formidable adversary Mike always knew I was. "They are here," I alerted Haley. She emerged from the library looking equally professional in a navy blue dress. Her father's watch, one of his most prized possessions, was prominently displayed on her wrist. "Are you ready?" she asked. Nervousness and determination were battling in her expression. "Completely." I squeezed her hand. "Remember, let them back themselves into a corner first." Mrs. Miller appeared. "The others arrived through the back entrance. They are ready in the dining room as you requested." "Perfect." I nodded gratefully. The doorbell rang. Mrs. Miller went to answer it with the practiced deference of someone who knew her role in this carefully choreographed performance. "Good morning, gentlemen," I heard her greet them. "Mrs. Davis and Haley are waiting right this way, please." Or they walked in with the easy familiarity of men who were used to controlling the room. Richard led the way. Jason followed with his omnipresent legal binder, and Matt brought up the rear. Behind them walked a gray-haired man in an expensive suit. He simply radiated corporate authority. "Emily." Richard nodded. His smile never quite reached his eyes. "We appreciate you agreeing to this meeting. This is Mr. Brooks, the Chief Financial Officer for Davis Investments. We thought it would be productive to have a specialist join our discussion about the property's potential. So they had brought a financial executive to intimidate me. They wanted to use technical jargon and market valuations against me. Predictable. "I have considered it all," I replied softly. "I have prepared the dining room for our meeting. Follow me." I led them through the house. I noticed their evaluating glances at the renovations Mike had completed. In the formal dining room, a large table had been set up. There were documents at each seat, along with water bottles and coffee. It was the very picture of professional preparation. "Please take a seat," I instructed. "I believe we have a lot to discuss." As they settled in, their expressions of confidence were still firmly in place. I remained standing at the head of the table. "Before we begin," I said, "I want to thank you for your previous proposal. It was quite educational." Richard's smile widened. He clearly interpreted my comment as absolute capitulation. "We are glad you took the time to consider our offer. With Mr. Brooks's expertise, we can discuss the most advantageous arrangement. We need to divide the property's assets fairly." "Yes, division," I said. I picked up a remote control from the table. "That is precisely what I would like to discuss." I pressed a button. A hidden screen descended from the ceiling at the far end of the room. The brothers exchanged surprised looks. They clearly did not expect this level of preparation. "If you would direct your attention to the presentation," I continued. I clicked the remote once again. A detailed map of Ocean View Estate appeared on the screen. It showed the property lines, topographical features, and its position relative to the surrounding area. "This is the complete survey of Ocean View Estate," I explained. "The full 25 acres, not just the 10 acres mentioned in your proposal." Jason shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "The western portion is a non-developable preservation area. We excluded it just for simplicity." "Is that what you considered?" I replied with a hint of irony, "except for one tiny detail." Another click on the remote, and the map was overlaid with the complete resort project. It showed all the phases, including the golf course that Horizon Resorts had kept completely secret. Mr. Brooks sat up straight in his chair. His professional mask slipped as he leaned in. He studied the projection with sudden intense interest. "As you can see," I continued calmly, "Phase 2 of the project extends predominantly over the western area of our property. The very acres you so generously offered to exclude from our fair division." Richard's face turned bright red. "Those plans are just pure speculation. The analysis from Davis Investments clearly indicates—" "Actually," a new voice interrupted as the side door swung open, "those plans have been fully confirmed by the board of directors at Horizon Resorts." The Davis brothers turned around in total shock. Mr. Henderson, the CEO of Horizon Resorts, walked right into the room. He was followed by my lawyer and two executives in formal suits. "What is the meaning of this?" Richard demanded, half rising from his chair. "This," I replied pleasantly, "is a meeting about the true value and the future of Ocean View Estate. Mr. Henderson has expressed significant interest in the property. This is particularly true after reviewing the complete documents my husband compiled about the resort project." Mr. Brooks shot a deeply betrayed look at the Davis brothers. "You told me you had exclusive negotiating rights over this property." "They certainly do not." My lawyer intervened calmly. He placed additional documents right onto the table. "Mrs. Davis possesses a clear and unquestionable title to the entire property. The documents that the Davis gentleman showed you completely lack any legal merit." Richard slammed his hand down on the table. "This property has been in the Davis family for generations. Mike had a moral obligation to us." "Moral obligations." Haley spoke up for the very first time. Her voice was steady even though her hand gripped her water glass tightly. "Like the moral obligation you had toward my father. You defrauded his inheritance. You forged his signature on legal documents. You even threatened to frame him if he ever exposed you." The brothers completely froze. All the color drained straight out of their faces. "What exactly is she talking about?" Mr. Brooks asked. He was looking increasingly uncomfortable by the second. "Perhaps this will clear things up," I said, nodding over to my lawyer. He quickly distributed sealed envelopes to everyone sitting at the table. "These are copies of the documentation my husband meticulously preserved. They detail certain transactions related to the Davis family assets. I believe the statute of limitations has expired on a few of these matters. However, the tax authorities and the IRS might find the others quite interesting." Jason opened his envelope. He examined the contents with rapidly growing alarm. "These are strictly private family matters," he stammered. "They are completely irrelevant to our current discussion." "On the contrary," I countered, finally taking my seat at the head of the table, "they establish a clear pattern of fraudulent behavior. This directly affects your credibility in these negotiations. That behavior continued when you deliberately misled Mr. Brooks about your actual position to negotiate for this property." The room fell dead silent. The Davis brothers slowly realized the absolute totality of their exposure. Mike had documented absolutely everything. He had records of their historical crimes against him, their recent manipulations, and their attempts to seize valuable assets while pretending to be generous. "What do you want, Emily?" Richard finally asked. His confident facade was completely crumbling away. "I want you to leave Ocean View Estate and never come back," I declared simply. "I want you to cease all attempts to contest my ownership. You will also stop trying to manipulate my daughter. In exchange for that, these documents will remain strictly private." Mr. Brooks stood up abruptly. "I believe my involvement in this matter was based on incomplete and potentially fraudulent information. If you will excuse me, Mrs. Davis, I will contact you directly for any future discussions." He shot a look of pure disgust at the brothers before walking right out the door. Richard's face burned bright red as he watched his only ally leave. "You have no idea what you are doing, Emily. The development costs for that western area are utterly prohibitive. The logistics alone." "Actually," Mr. Henderson chimed in, "Horizon Resorts has developed new construction methods. They are specifically suited for this exact type of terrain. We are fully prepared to make Mrs. Davis a very generous offer. It will recognize both the challenges and the exceptional potential of this property." As the meeting continued, it transformed. What was supposed to be a hostile takeover by the Davis brothers became my carefully orchestrated counteroffensive. I caught Haley's eye across the table. Her slight smile conveyed absolutely everything. It showed pride, vindication, and a bittersweet realization. Mike had prepared us for this very moment, even from beyond the grave. The Davis brothers finally left 2 hours later. They were defeated, exposed, and legally bound by the agreement my lawyer had prepared in advance. The future of Ocean View Estate was secured exactly as Mike had envisioned. It would not be divided among greedy relatives. It would not be sold to the highest bidder. Instead, it was preserved as a legacy for the family he had chosen and loved so dearly. That meant Haley and me. As their vehicles disappeared down the long driveway, Mrs. Miller appeared right by my side. "Your husband would be so incredibly proud," she said calmly. "You outsmarted them exactly the way he always believed you would." I watched the dust settle on the dirt road. A strange mix of emotions washed over me. The triumph mixed deeply with the grief. My strength was emerging straight from my vulnerability. "We are not done yet," I replied. I was thinking about the videos still waiting on Mike's laptop and the vast future stretching out before us. This was only the first battle, but it was one we won decisively. We used the weapons Mike had meticulously prepared. We relied on the strength he always saw in me, even when I could not see it in myself. The weeks following the collapse of the Davis brothers passed in a whirlwind of practical matters. We finalized our agreement and held meetings with Horizon Resorts. We needed to structure a mutually beneficial deal that would preserve the most sensitive portion of the property. We also took a very careful inventory of everything Mike had created at Ocean View Estate. Haley stayed with me during this entire period. Her initial resentment over her father's secrets slowly transformed into deep appreciation for his foresight. We established a comfortable routine of watching his daily videos together every single morning. We both found immense comfort and guidance in his posthumous presence. "Did you have any idea at all?" Haley asked one afternoon. We were sitting on the porch, watching the beautiful sunset. "Did you have any suspicion that Dad was sick or planning all of this?" I considered her question very carefully. I searched through my memories for any missed signs. There were little things that make sense in hindsight. His insistence on updating our legal documents 3 years ago was one. The way he sometimes looked at us during dinner, almost memorizing our faces, was another. Then there was his sudden interest in photographing ordinary moments. "I just thought he was going through a midlife appreciation phase," Haley said, smiling quite sadly. "In a way, he really was." I reflected, taking a sip of my tea. Just not for the reasons we had originally imagined. The biggest change was how he stopped putting off personal matters. Your father was always a someday person when it came to his personal life. Someday we would take that trip to Europe. Someday he would learn photography. Someday we would renovate the kitchen. Then suddenly he started doing things instead of just talking about them. He was creating something lasting. I shook my head, still adapting to the sheer magnitude of what he had hidden. I never once imagined he was racing against time. He was creating a legacy because he knew he would not be here to see it flourish. The executives at Horizon Resorts were completely surprised when I outlined my conditions for access to the property. Instead of selling everything for a lump sum as most owners would do, I insisted on a different arrangement. I wanted a deal that prioritized environmental preservation, established strict limits on development, and guaranteed that the greenhouse and the art studio would remain totally intact. Mrs. Davis, the head negotiator, said, "These terms are highly unusual in our industry." "Then perhaps the industry needs a few more unusual terms," I replied. I was channeling Mike's quiet confidence. "This land is incredibly special. It can wait until we agree on responsible methods to develop it." To my great surprise, Mr. Henderson, the CEO, was intrigued rather than deterred by my approach. "Your husband mentioned you had a degree in literature and art before becoming a professor," he observed. "He said you would insist on doing things the right way, not just the lucrative way." It was just another piece of Mike's planning revealed. He had established contacts with select people in the industry. He was setting the stage for negotiations he knew would happen after his death. 1 month after claiming my inheritance, I was standing in the art studio Mike had created. Sunlight was streaming through the massive windows, illuminating a blank canvas on the easel. After more than a decade away from painting, I finally picked up the brush again. I was hesitant at first. Then, with growing confidence, I looked at my subject for the day. It was waiting patiently in the greenhouse, visible right through the studio windows. It was the rare blue orchid Mike had found. He searched for it because he remembered a casual comment I made many years ago. Mrs. Miller taught me all about orchid cultivation. My fingers were gradually regaining the dexterity I thought I had lost forever. "Mom." Haley appeared right in the doorway holding the laptop in her hand. "Today's video is a little different. I think you should watch this one alone." I put down my paintbrush, feeling quite curious. We had grown so accustomed to watching Mike's daily messages together. Different how it is marked specifically for day 30. He titled it, "When Emily Paints Again." She handed me the computer with a very soft smile. "He knew you would eventually come back to this." I stood alone in the studio, surrounded by the tools of a passion I was finally rediscovering. I opened the laptop and pressed play. Mike appeared on the screen. He was sitting in this exact same room before any of the art supplies were installed. The space was completely empty except for those magnificent windows. "Hello, my love," he began. His warm smile reached me across the boundaries of time. "If you are watching this, you found your way back to art. You return to the passion you set aside for our family all those years ago. I touched the screen very softly, hot tears welling up in my eyes. I have been thinking a lot about legacy, he continued, about what we leave behind, about the marks we make on this world. Most people think of legacy in terms of children wealth or grand achievements. But there is another kind of legacy. It is the enabling of possibilities in those we love the most. He gestured to the empty space all around him. This space is not finished yet, but in my mind I can see it totally complete. I see it full of light, vibrant color and your beautiful creations. I picture you standing before an easel, paintbrush in hand. You are finally giving shape to the visions you have carried inside you all these years. I looked at the portrait of the orchid sitting on my easel. I was struck by how closely it aligned with Mike's vivid imagination. I structured everything to give you ultimate freedom, Emily. He continued, you have financial security through the agreement with the resort. You have protection from the interference of my greedy brothers. You have a beautiful space to create your art. But what you do with that freedom that is your legacy to build, it is not mine to determine. He leaned closer to the camera, his expression turning intense. The house, the greenhouse, the art studio, they are not the actual inheritance. They are simply the tools. The true inheritance is the pure possibility. It is the chance to become more fully yourself without any restrictions. I paused the video. I was completely overwhelmed by the depth of his understanding. Mike had known me better than I ever knew myself. He had seen the dormant artist still alive inside the professor and mother I had become. When I resumed the video, his expression had softened considerably. I have one request, though it is yours to accept or reject. In the closet behind this room there is a large canvas. I commissioned it right before my diagnosis. It is completely blank. It is waiting for you. When you are ready, truly ready, I hope you create something for it. Paint something that captures not just what you see, but what you truly feel. Paint your feelings about this place that brought me back to my roots and will lead you into your future. The video ended with his familiar, loving sign-off. Until tomorrow, my sweet love. I remained completely motionless for several minutes, processing his profound words. Then, driven by a sudden impulse, I walked to the storage closet. I found exactly what he had described. It was a massive, custom-sized canvas. It was absolutely perfect for the main wall in the living room, the very heart of the house. Over the following weeks, as autumn painted the landscape in gorgeous golden hues, I made countless sketches. I was trying to capture the essence of Ocean View Estate and what it truly represented. None of them satisfied me. Then one morning, I was watching Haley tend to the orchids in the greenhouse, and something finally clicked. The painting took shape very gradually. It was not a traditional landscape, but a complex blend of real and metaphorical elements. The house, exactly as it existed now, sat in the background. It was rendered with near photographic precision. In the foreground, there was a series of translucent layers. They showed everything that had come before. It showed the abandoned property Mike had purchased his childhood family home, and beneath all of that, the ancient land that had witnessed generations come and go. Linking these temporal layers together were two figures. One was a woman, and the other was a young woman. Their features were only subtly suggested just enough to represent journeys that were both specific and universal. Behind them, almost completely invisible, unless you knew exactly where to look, stood a third figure. It was a man holding a delicate blue orchid in his hands, gently offering it to the other two. Welcome to our story, family. I am glad you are still here. Keep listening to my story until the end, and let me know in the comments what city you are watching from. When the painting was finally finished, Mrs. Miller helped me hang it in its designated spot in the main living room. Haley took a step back to study it. Tears were welling up in her eyes. That is Dad right, and us. She traced the outlines of the figures with her finger in the empty air. the past, the present, and the future of this beautiful place. Legacy, I said simply. Not what is left behind, but what continues to move forward. That night, I watched the sunset from the porch of what was now truly my home. I felt Mike's presence all around me. It was not as a ghost or a sad memory, but as an ongoing partnership. He had given me so much more than a property and material security. He gave me a framework for total reinvention. He gave me the freedom to discover who Emily Davis could become when she was no longer limited by hard circumstances. The agreement with the resort would provide financial stability forever. The house would evolve under our careful stewardship. I would continue bringing beauty into the world through my rediscovered talents. I was creating my own legacy right alongside the one Mike had prepared so carefully. A few months later, I received a very unexpected visit. The doorbell rang while I was working in the art studio. Mrs. Miller appeared in the doorway. She had a very cautious expression on her face. "Richard Davis is here, and he is all alone." My body immediately tensed up. "Does he have any legal documents with him?" "Not that I have seen. He looks quite different. He seems far less arrogant somehow. He just said he would like a few minutes of your time." I strongly considered turning him away, but my curiosity ultimately won. "I will see him out on the porch. Do not invite him inside." Richard was much thinner than the last time I saw him. The deep lines around his eyes were even more pronounced. He turned around when I opened the door. His expression was surprisingly humble. "Emily, thank you for seeing me." "What can I do for you, Richard?" Our legal agreement was quite clear. "I am not here to contest the agreement." He looked around the property, then back at me. "I am here to apologize." Of all the things I expected to hear, an apology was dead last on the list. I crossed my arms and waited for him to continue. "I have been reflecting a lot these past few months. I have thought about Mike, about our broken relationship, and about the terrible choices I made." He swallowed hard. "I did not expect you to win, but I really should have. Mike was always the smartest one of us all." "That is not an apology," I observed coldly. "You are right," he nodded. "I apologize for trying to take this house away from you. I apologize for trying to manipulate Haley, and I am sorry for all the years I made Mike's life much harder than it needed to be." I looked closely at him, searching for any signs of falsehood, but I only found deep exhaustion and possibly genuine, profound regret. "Why apologize now?" "I have cancer," he said simply. "Stage 4. My prognosis is not good at all. It really puts things into perspective. The haunting echo of Mike's illness was impossible to ignore. I am very sorry to hear that. I did not come here for sympathy. I came because my little brother built something truly beautiful here, and I, in my blind arrogance and greed, almost destroyed it." He pulled a small package right out of his pocket. "I found this among our father's old belongings. I thought that you or Haley might want to have it." I cautiously accepted the small package. Inside there was a faded old photograph. It showed 3 young boys standing under a massive olive tree. The youngest one, obviously Mike, was holding a tiny potted orchid. "That was the very first one he ever grew," Richard explained softly. "Before everything." He left the sentence completely unfinished. The heavy guilt was highly visible on his face. I looked down at young Mike in the picture and then back up at the broken man standing before me. "Would you like to see the greenhouse?" I offered. The invitation surprised us both. Mike grew some truly impressive orchids in there. For a brief moment, I thought he would decline. Then, with an almost imperceptible nod, he followed me into the property he once tried to steal. We walked quietly among the beautiful flowers his brother had cultivated with so much love. I suddenly saw Richard exactly as Mike must have seen him in those videos. He was not just a villain to be defeated. He was a man deeply tormented by choices he could never undo. Forgiveness would not erase the painful past, nor would it change the inevitable future. But perhaps it was a crucial part of the legacy, too. It was the capacity to choose compassion when revenge would be so much easier. I will never know if the ghost of regret that brought Richard to my door was genuine or just another calculated act. What I do know is that when he left something at Ocean View, Estate shifted very subtly. It felt as if a final chapter had definitively closed. That night I watched Mike's very last video. He smiled at me from the bright screen. His eyes were full of a deep peace that I never truly noticed when he was alive. This is the end of our daily journey together, my sweet love. It has been 1 year of messages to guide you through the first difficult months without me. But this is not the end of us. He paused for a moment. He looked into the camera as if he could actually see me sitting there. We will continue in the wise decisions you will make. We continue in the profound love we share with Haley, and we live on in the breathtaking beauty you will create from now on. The house I feared so much is now yours to completely transform. The dark secret I kept has blossomed into your greatest gift. The promise I asked you to make only to release you from it later has become the beautiful path to your ultimate liberation. He smiled one last radiant time. Never forget this, Emily. You were always the true driving force between us, until someday, my sweet love. The screen went totally dark. In the heavy silence that followed, I found not only profound loss, but limitless possibility. The house Mike had begged me never to visit had officially become my sanctuary. The painful secrets he kept transformed into my greatest strength. The promise he asked me to make had become the golden key to my bright future. I stood up and walked over to the large painting in the living room. I observed the intricate layers of past, present, and future that I had carefully depicted. Mike had done so much more than leave me a valuable piece of real estate. He had given me the beautiful opportunity to rediscover myself entirely. The house he feared had become the house I deeply loved, and now it was mine to continue transforming one single day at a time. Morning light streamed straight through the large living room windows. It illuminated my painting with an almost supernatural golden glow. 6 months had passed since Richard's last surprising visit. Life at Ocean View Estate had found a wonderful new rhythm. It resonated with Mike's vision and my own rediscovered bold aspirations. The doorbell rang just as I was finishing my morning cup of coffee. I really hope I am not too early. Haley's voice rang out from the porch. The traffic from New York City was much lighter than I expected. I opened the heavy door. I found her loaded down with what looked like dozens of blank canvases and fresh art supplies. It is never too early for you. I smiled warmly, helping her carry the heavy load. What is all of this for? Haley smiled widely. Her eyes sparkled with an excitement that reminded me so much of Mike it almost took my breath away. I really needed a change of scenery for my final semester project. I thought to myself, what better place to work than right here? Since she had returned to New York University to finish her Bachelor of Fine Arts degree, Haley had blossomed in ways I never anticipated. The tragic loss of her father had deepened something profound inside her. It transformed her from a simple student into a true, passionate artist. Did your professor actually approve of this move? Actually, it was entirely his idea. She laughed out loud. He said my recent work was far too confined. He told me I desperately needed space to expand my vision. I showed him some pictures of the studio here. He practically ordered me to pack up and come. While we ate breakfast out on the sunny terrace, Haley shared all her big plans. She wanted to create a series of paintings that would explore the complex concepts of inheritance and memory. Her vibrant enthusiasm was incredibly contagious. I soon found myself offering her the second bedroom in the East Wing for her own creative projects. Are you absolutely sure, Mom, I know how much you value your quiet space here? Your father built this place for both of us, I said very softly. I truly believe he would love to see you working here. He would want you to bring your own unique vision into this space. Later that afternoon, I was showing Haley a few painting techniques I had recently rediscovered. Suddenly, the telephone rang loudly. It was Mr. Henderson calling from Horizon Resorts. "Mrs. Davis, we have some very interesting news for you. Based entirely on the environmental studies you ordered, we have completely redesigned our approach to Phase 2 of the major project." The agreement I had negotiated included a comprehensive environmental impact assessment. It had to be done before any development could occur in the sensitive zones adjacent to Ocean View Estate. I had firmly insisted on this specific clause. I remembered Mike's fiery passion for preserving the natural beauty he had worked so hard to restore. And I asked over the phone. I gestured to Haley that she could continue painting while I took the important call. Our top engineers believe they can achieve all of our goals while leaving the Century Olive Grove completely intact. It means a very significant additional cost for us. However, our marketing department sees tremendous value in promoting an ecologically responsible approach. The sharp irony of the situation did not escape me at all. The ancient olive trees that meant so much to Mike would now become a major selling point for the luxury resort. They were preserved not necessarily out of principle, but for corporate profit. Nevertheless, the final result was exactly the same. The precious land would be fully protected. "I am extremely glad to hear that, Mr. Henderson. I would absolutely love to review the revised blueprints whenever they are available. Actually, I was hoping you could join us for a special presentation next week. Several people on our corporate team have been closely following your artistic work. We were wondering if you would consider a major commission piece for our main lobby." I stopped breathing for a brief moment. My artwork, I have not exhibited anything publicly in over 15 years. That is precisely why it is so incredibly intriguing. Your rediscovery as a passionate artist parallels our own rediscovery of this magnificent land. There is a very powerful narrative right there. It is a story we would love to make part of the overall resort experience. After I hung up the phone, I found Haley watching me with a very knowing smile. "So they are courting you for a major art commission," she stated happily. "Dad would be so unbelievably proud." "I have not said yes just yet." "But you definitely will," she replied with total confidence. "The brave woman who painted that vibrant self-portrait is completely back now. I can see it clearly every single time you pick up a paintbrush." Her sweet words made me reflect on how much had changed in such a short amount of time. I went from a university professor to a grieving widow. Then I went from a widow to a reluctant heiress. And now I was going from a rediscovered artist to quite possibly a commissioned professional artist. "Do you know what the strangest part of all this is?" I asked her, as we headed out to the greenhouse to catalog the beautiful new blooms. "Now that I am painting almost every day, I feel more connected to Mike than I did in our final few years together. It is almost as if by finding myself again, I have somehow found him too." Haley gently touched a bright purple orchid. Her expression was deeply thoughtful. "Perhaps it is because you are living exactly the way he always hoped you would. You are not trapped in your grief. Instead, you are actively transforming it into something incredibly beautiful." It was a bright sunny day in May when the formal letter finally arrived. The official letterhead of the Department of Cultural Affairs stood out sharply against the stark white envelope. For a brief second, I actually hesitated to open it. "What is that?" Mrs. Miller asked as she watered the lovely orchids out on the terrace. "I am not entirely sure," I murmured, finally breaking the tight seal. "Oh," I was left completely speechless as I read the typed contents. "Is it bad news?" The genuine concern was highly evident in her voice. "Quite the opposite," I replied. I was trying desperately to process what I was reading. Apparently, the commission I completed for Horizon Resorts has caught some major attention. They want to include my artistic work in a national exhibition featuring emerging artists. Mrs. Miller smiled broadly. Emerging at 58 years old. How absolutely charming, I laughed out loud. The pure absurdity of the situation finally hit me. I suppose it is never too late to emerge in the art world. The real irony is that I probably never would have returned to painting if Mike had not built this studio. I would not be here if he had not left me this wonderful legacy. That is exactly what makes your journey so incredibly powerful, Mrs. Davis. It is the exact type of story that truly inspires other people. And it certainly was. The large commission for Horizon Resorts was a series of 3 massive canvases. They beautifully captured the evolution of Ocean View Estate straight through the changing seasons. It had attracted a lot of unexpected, wonderful attention. The unique combination of natural beauty, deep personal history, and an artistic renaissance really struck a chord. It resonated with people in a way I had never once anticipated. The sharp ring of the doorbell suddenly interrupted my swirling thoughts. I looked over at the clock, feeling quite confused. I was not expecting any visitors today. "I will go check," Mrs. Miller quickly offered. Through the large windows, I saw an official car. It had the bright logo of the New York City Planning Department right on the door. A man and a woman, dressed in sharp suits, were waiting very patiently on the front porch. "Mrs. Davis?" Mrs. Miller returned with a highly perplexed expression on her face. "They are from the Urban Planning Department. They say they need to speak with you regarding a very urgent matter." I welcomed them into the main living room. I was deeply intrigued and slightly worried. "Is there some sort of problem with the development permits for the resort?" "Mrs. Davis, I am Martin Sullivan, and this is my esteemed colleague, Sophia Bennett." The man introduced himself with strict formality. "We are here regarding a historical matter that we believe will interest you deeply." Sophia Bennett carefully placed a thick folder right onto the coffee table. "We've been thoroughly reviewing old historical archives for a new cultural preservation project. In the process, we uncovered some fascinating information about Ocean View Estate. We felt you absolutely needed to know about it." She opened the folder. It revealed ancient photographs and yellowed documents I had never seen before. "This property holds a major historical significance that has gone completely unnoticed for several decades. During World War II, it served as a vital, secret refuge. It was a safe haven for artists and famous writers who were heavily persecuted for their political beliefs." I stared closely at the old photographs in total amazement. They clearly showed men and women working right here in the main living room of Ocean View Estate, although the room looked vastly different from how it appeared today. I had absolutely no idea about this. "Very few people do," Martin quickly confirmed. "The family who owned the massive property back then deliberately kept this heroic history a tight secret. They did it for extremely obvious security reasons. But with all the new developments happening in the area, we believe it is finally time to properly recognize this rich heritage." Sophia pulled out even more historical documents. Among those who found safe refuge here was Teresa Davis. She was a brilliant poet whose beautiful work is just now beginning to receive the widespread recognition it truly deserves. Davis? That familiar last name startled me. "As in—" "Yes," Sophia nodded knowingly. "According to our official record, she was the paternal grandmother of your late husband." The stunning revelation left me completely speechless. Did Mike actually know about this incredible history? Was this yet another hidden layer of the beautiful legacy he had left me? Was it a deep connection to an artistic past that completely transcended all those petty family disputes? "What exactly are you proposing here?" I asked once I finally regained my total composure. Martin leaned forward intently. "We would very much like to declare Ocean View Estate as an official site of major cultural interest. This designation would provide additional legal protection to the property. It would also formally recognize its profound historical significance. There would also be substantial grant funding available for any additional restoration or cultural preservation you might wish to undertake." My racing mind spun wildly with all the heavy implications. The official designation as a historical site would strictly limit what Horizon Resorts could build nearby, but it would also guarantee that the true essence of Ocean View Estate would remain totally intact for future generations. I need some time to carefully consider all of this, I finally said, and I would really like to discuss it with my daughter before making any final decision. Of course. Sophia politely left her business card on the table. But there is one more thing we thought you would really like to see. From her leather briefcase, she pulled out a small, beautifully bound leather book. This was recently discovered hidden deep within the archives at New York University. It is a personal diary belonging to Teresa Davis. It includes never-before-published poems she wrote while she was hiding right here. Many of them speak movingly about the delicate orchids she cultivated. She grew them to maintain her hope during those incredibly dark times. I took the fragile book with visibly trembling hands. A very strange feeling of déjà vu washed completely over me. The beautiful orchids, art used as an act of resistance, a safe refuge acting as a pure act of love. The striking echoes across the generations were far too powerful to be mere coincidence. Could I possibly borrow this for a while? I asked softly. I would love to read it very carefully. It is actually a replica copy made entirely for you. Sophia smiled warmly. We felt that it truly belonged right here, exactly where these moving poems were originally written. After they finally left, I sat quietly out in the garden. I slowly flipped through Teresa Davis's personal diary. Her poignant words, written nearly a full century earlier, resonated with a highly unsettling familiarity. She wrote beautifully about cultivating pure beauty in the darkest of times. She wrote about preserving vital culture when others ruthlessly sought to destroy it. She wrote about a home that was both a safe refuge and a powerful symbol of resistance. In one particular entry dated June of 1938, Teresa wrote a very special passage. The orchids bloomed brightly today against all possible odds. They are so delicate yet deeply stubborn. They are highly fragile yet wonderfully resilient. Much like us, I suppose. The harsh outside world may try to completely crush us, but we keep bravely creating. We keep stubbornly blooming. Someday, when all this terror finally ends, perhaps someone will find great beauty where there was once only paralyzing fear. Perhaps someone will lovingly transform this dark hiding place into a bright place of celebration. I plant these tiny seeds, both literal and poetic, for that completely unknown future. I looked up toward the glass greenhouse. Mike's beautiful orchids continued blooming brightly inside. I looked toward the studio, where I now passionately created my own art. I looked toward the large painting in the living room that perfectly linked the past, present, and future. Teresa had bravely planted seeds for a future she could never possibly imagine. It was exactly the same way Mike had lovingly done for me. "That is absolutely fascinating, Mom," Haley exclaimed excitedly over the telephone. I had just told her all about Teresa's diary and the amazing proposal from the Cultural Planning Department. "Do you really think Dad knew all about his brave grandmother?" "I'm not entirely sure," I reflected thoughtfully. I looked out the window toward the ancient olive trees that had silently witnessed so much history. He never once mentioned her. But then again, he never talked much about his difficult family anyway. And yet the beautiful way he completely transformed this special place, the tremendous importance he placed on beautiful art and delicate orchids, I cannot help but think that somehow he actually knew, or perhaps he just deeply felt this profound connection. "I am driving back up this coming weekend," Haley quickly decided. "I want to read that amazing diary for myself, and we really should discuss the historical site proposal in person." After I hung up the phone, I sat quietly in the art studio. I contemplated the new canvas I was currently working on. It had originally started as a purely abstract portrait of the greenhouse orchids, but now I clearly saw that I had been unconsciously incorporating elements evoking Teresa's era. There were faint shadows of hidden figures. There were brief glimpses of handwritten diary pages. The rough texture of past times was beautifully superimposed right over the bright present. Art truly has a deep memory, I thought to myself. Perhaps the sturdy walls of Ocean View Estate had been softly whispering to me this entire time. They were sharing old stories that I did not even realize I was intently listening to. My telephone rang loudly once again. This time it was a completely unknown number. "Mrs. Davis." The deep male voice sounded vaguely familiar. "This is Jason Davis." I immediately tensed up at the sound of his name. "What can I do for you, Mr. Davis?" Our legal agreement was strictly settled. "I am not calling to discuss that old agreement." He interrupted me quickly. His tone was notably less arrogant than in any of our previous encounters. "Richard told me all about his visit to your house a few months ago. His condition has worsened considerably since then." "I am very sorry to hear that." "The doctors say he only has a few weeks left, maybe even just days. He has been talking to me constantly about Teresa, our late grandmother. Apparently, right before you completely defeated us, he had been researching our family history for some unknown reason. He found old letters and hidden diaries that we had all completely forgotten about." I gripped the telephone tightly. My heart started racing wildly. "Do you know anything about her brilliant work as a poet? Do you know about her time hiding at Ocean View Estate during the war?" The heavy silence on the other end of the line told me absolutely everything I needed to know. "How do you know about that?" Jason finally asked. He sounded genuinely shocked. I briefly told him about the unexpected visit from the Cultural Planning Department. I also mentioned the replica diary they had given me. "So that explains it," Jason murmured softly. "Richard has been heavily insisting that he needed to speak with you. He wants to talk before it is too late. He said there is much more. There are more historical documents, old letters and original photographs. He says they are things that rightfully belong at Ocean View Estate, not with us." "Why would you tell me this right now?" I asked. I was still feeling quite suspicious. "Because he is actively dying Mrs. Davis." Jason's voice cracked slightly. "And because I think he has been remembering who we truly were. He remembers before all the greedy money and deep bitterness completely changed us. We have completely forgotten our own rich history. We forgot what this family once proudly stood for." I took a very deep breath. I carefully considered my limited options. "Tell your brother that I am perfectly willing to speak with him. He can come down to Ocean View Estate whenever he feels strong enough." "He absolutely cannot travel," Jason replied sadly. "He is confined to a bed in the hospital. We were wondering, I know it is a lot to ask, but we wondered if you would consider visiting him right here in New York City." The bold request caught me entirely by surprise. Visiting Richard Davis seemed totally unthinkable. He was the greedy man who had ruthlessly tried to take away everything Mike had left me. And yet, "I will go tomorrow," I suddenly found myself saying. "Send me all the hospital details." That night, I pulled out Mike's old laptop. I reviewed some of his earlier videos, desperately searching for any slight mention of Teresa. In his 30th message, I finally found something. "I never actually met my grandmother Teresa," Mike said. He was answering a question I had evidently asked him in an earlier video. "But my father used to talk about her sometimes. He only did it when he was sober enough to actually remember. He always said she was the only true artist in our entire family. He said the rest of us were just simple merchants and greedy opportunists. I did not know until much later that she had beautifully written poetry. I did not know she had bravely risked her own life to protect others during the war." By the time I finally discovered the truth, the bitter resentment had already taken deep root among us brothers. I always wonder if things would have been vastly different. Would we be different if we had understood that heroic legacy from the very beginning? I paused the video. I felt another major piece of the complex puzzle click perfectly into place. Mike had not chosen Ocean View Estate solely for its connection to his childhood. He chose it for a much deeper connection. It was a connection to a family history that had remained largely hidden in the dark. The next day, I drove all the way into New York City. I brought Teresa's diary with me, carrying a heavy mix of conflicting emotions. The clinical hospital was a massively imposing brick building. As I made my way to Richard's hospital room, I mentally prepared myself for what I might find. I was completely unprepared for the shockingly emaciated figure lying in that bed. Richard Davis was once the highly arrogant patriarch of the family. Now he looked incredibly fragile and diminished. Medical tubes and beeping monitors completely surrounded him. His tired eyes opened when I walked in. There was a bright flash of recognition and something else entirely. Relief. It briefly crossed his pale face. "Emily." His raspy voice was barely audible over the machines. "You came." "I did," I replied gently. I sat down in the plastic chair right next to his bed. "Thank you." He coughed very weakly. "There is something you absolutely must know. It is something I understood far too late." From underneath his hospital pillow, he pulled out a yellowed envelope. "This is the very last poem Teresa ever wrote at Ocean View Estate. She wrote it specifically for her grandson, for Mike. She wrote it even though he had not even been born yet. Somehow she just knew. She knew he would be the one who would return. He would be the one who remembered." With visibly trembling fingers, I opened the envelope. I carefully pulled out a brittle sheet of old paper. The handwriting was highly elegant, but also quite rushed. It looked as if it had been written in a briefly stolen moment. "To the one who returns. When you find this place again, recognize it by its deep scars. Recognize it by the beautiful way the sunlight falls upon the ancient stones. Recognize it by the lingering scent of flowers. Flowers I planted for a future I will never see. Do not seek bitter revenge for what was tragically lost. Seek joyful renewal in what still remains. The deep roots are always stronger than the violent storms. True memory is far more enduring than blind rage. Build something truly beautiful here. Do not build it as a sad monument to the past. Build it as a glorious gift for those who will come after. And when you grow completely tired of fighting, remember that some special places actually choose us. They firmly claim us as custodians, not for who we once were, but for exactly who we could be." Hot tears completely blurred my vision as I read Teresa's words. They were so poignantly prophetic. I looked up from the paper to see that Richard was also crying completely silently. "Mike actually found this right before he bought Ocean View Estate," he said with a very hoarse voice. "He showed it to me. He was trying one last time to build a bridge between us brothers. I cruelly laughed at him. I told him he was being stupidly sentimental and completely naive. And now," I started, "and now you understand exactly what he was trying to do." I finished the sentence for him. He nodded very weakly against the pillows. He was beautifully honoring the true legacy of our family, not the terrible greed and the cheating we completely sank into, but the immense courage and the brilliant creativity of Teresa. He was building something truly beautiful exactly like she told him to, for you, for Haley, for the bright future. He weakly handed me another envelope. This one was much thicker. There are many more documents, old photographs, and private letters in there. They rightfully belong at Ocean View Estate. They belong to the amazing history Mike was desperately trying to preserve. I gently took the envelope. I felt its heavy weight, both physical and emotional. "Why are you giving all this to me right now?" Richard closed his eyes for a long moment. It was as if he was gathering his final strength. "Because in the very end, when absolutely everything else fades away, the only thing that matters is the truth. And the honest truth is that Mike was right all along. He was always absolutely right about Ocean View Estate, about Teresa, about what truly matters in this life. He shifted very uncomfortably in the bed. The extreme effort of the conversation was clearly exhausting him. I am not asking for your forgiveness. I do not deserve it at all. I only ask that you fiercely protect this history. I ask that you perfectly complete what Mike heroically started. I ask that you tell Haley all about her amazing great-grandmother, so that at least one part of our family remembers exactly where we truly came from. Right before I left the room, I gently placed Teresa's leather diary right into his weak hands. "Perhaps you would like to read the rest of her beautiful words," I said softly. I truly believe she would have wanted you to know them as well. Richard looked down at the small leather-bound book. His thin fingers stroked the cover with deep reverence. "Mike always told me you were the stronger one of the two," he murmured quietly. "Now I finally see exactly why he chose you. I see why he trusted you with all of this." As I walked out of the busy hospital, I felt as if a massive circle had somehow been completely closed. The tiny seeds that Teresa had bravely planted, both literally and metaphorically, had bloomed beautifully across the generations. They bloomed right through the pain and the heavy loss. They bloomed to create something that none of them could have ever possibly imagined. Richard Davis tragically passed away exactly 3 days later. I did not attend the sad funeral. However, I did send a stunning arrangement of orchids cultivated right in the greenhouse at Ocean View Estate. It came with a simple note that read, "The deep roots are stronger than the violent storms. True memory is more enduring than blind rage." Exactly 1 week later, the Cultural Planning Department returned. They brought the official papers to formally designate Ocean View Estate as a major site of cultural interest. With Haley standing right by my side, I proudly signed the legal documents. I truly felt I was completing a circle that had started long before I was even born. "Do you know exactly what this means, right?" Haley smiled warmly as we watched the city officials drive away. "The massive new resort project will have to completely adapt to the strict historical preservation rules. Horizon Resorts is not going to be happy about this at all." To our absolute surprise, Mr. Henderson called that very same afternoon. He did not call to angrily protest. He called to warmly congratulate us. "This new designation certainly changes our corporate plans," he freely admitted, "but it also offers us a completely unique narrative, a luxury resort built completely around a historical site with such a fascinating story. Our marketing department is absolutely thrilled with all the exciting possibilities." And that is exactly how 1 year after discovering Ocean View Estate for the very first time, I found myself cutting a ceremonial red ribbon. It was for the grand opening of a small art gallery and cultural center right on the property. Using generous funds from both the Department of Cultural Affairs and Horizon Resorts, we had beautifully transformed one of the outer buildings. It was now a space fully dedicated to the history of Teresa Davis. It also highlighted the role of Ocean View Estate as a safe refuge for artists during World War II. Haley, who was now working hard on her Master of Fine Arts degree, had expertly curated the entire inaugural exhibition. She brilliantly combined historical photographs, moving extracts from Teresa's diary, and contemporary art heavily inspired by her legacy. "Teresa would have absolutely loved this," Jason Davis said warmly. He had come to the grand opening with his younger brother, Matt. Our relationship was still very cautious, but the profound discovery of our shared history had created something new. It created, if not a complete reconciliation, at least a deep, mutual respect. "Do you think Mike actually knew all of this?" Matt asked quietly. He was observing a beautiful photograph of Teresa in her youth. She looked strikingly similar to Haley. Did he know that one day this would become a wonderful place to celebrate her legacy? "I firmly believe Mike planted seeds," I replied with a soft smile. I was thinking about all the videos he had left the art studio he created and the beautiful greenhouse totally full of rare orchids. Just like Teresa, he built something truly beautiful without knowing exactly how it would bloom, but he fully trusted that it eventually would. That night, long after all the happy guests had gone home, I sat quietly on the porch with a glass of red wine. I contemplated the bright stars shining over Ocean View Estate. The final agreement with Horizon Resorts had turned out so much better than anyone could have ever expected. The luxury resort would be built, but it would strictly respect the historical and environmental integrity of the whole area. The vast majority of our property would remain completely intact. It was fully protected by both its cultural designation and the legal restrictions we fiercely negotiated. Financially speaking, we were more than secure. The incredible agreement provided not only a very considerable initial sum, but also continuous income. That guaranteed that Ocean View Estate would continue thriving for many generations to come. But the true legacy, I finally realized, was not the massive amount of money or even the beautiful property itself. It was the amazing history that had been slowly revealed. It was the continuity straight through time. It was the resistance of art and pure beauty in the face of terrible adversity. My phone vibrated with a text message from Haley. I just remembered that today is exactly 1 year since you opened that very first door at Ocean View Estate. Do you have any regrets at all? I smiled warmly and replied quickly, none at all. Some promises are simply meant to be broken. Some closed doors desperately need to be opened wide. Looking back toward the house, Mike had begged me never to visit the big house that was now my true home, our true home. I thought about how a sad ending can actually be a beautiful beginning. Mike's tragic death had initiated this incredible journey. But what I had discovered and what we had boldly created since then was something totally new. It was deeply rooted in the past, but looking firmly toward the bright future. In my studio, a brand new blank canvas was waiting. It was one I had started heavily inspired by Teresa's final poem. In it, 3 female figures powerfully represented 3 distinct generations. There was Teresa with her pen and her fierce resistance. There was me with my newly rediscovered paintbrushes. And there was Haley bravely carrying both legacies toward a future yet to be written. The title, written softly in pencil on the edge, read, The Guardians of Ocean View Estate. The afternoon sun bathed the olive grove in golden light. We had set up long tables there for a grand celebration. It was the official opening day of the Davis Foundation for the Arts. It was a nonprofit organization created to support local artists and aspiring writers. It was beautifully housed right on the grounds of Ocean View Estate. Do you know what day today is? Asked Mrs. Miller. She was now the proud director of the foundation's therapeutic horticulture program. How could I possibly forget? I smiled. Today makes it exactly 3 years since Mike left us. And just look at what you have created since then. I observed the lively scene all around me. Dozens of happy people were chatting animatedly under the ancient olive trees. Young art students were proudly displaying their work on small easels arranged among the trees. Local musicians were playing very softly in a corner of the lush garden. Haley was absolutely radiant in a bright blue dress. She was guiding a group of potential donors straight through the new wing of the gallery. It was displaying beautiful art inspired entirely by Teresa's poems. Among the large crowd, I easily distinguished Jason and Matt Davis. To my great surprise, they had become highly enthusiastic supporters of the foundation. We would never be a perfectly united family in the traditional sense, but we had found a profound common purpose in preserving and honoring a shared legacy. Emily. Jason approached me holding a very small wooden box. We found this among Richard's very last belongings. We strongly believe he would have wanted it to be right here. I opened the small box to find an antique silver pocket watch. Engraved beautifully on the shiny cover was a delicate orchid. It belonged to Teresa, Jason explained softly. She gave it to her son, our late father, who never truly appreciated its deep meaning. Richard found it when he was doing his research into our family history. This belongs in the museum's historical collection, I said. I was deeply moved by the incredible gesture. Actually, Matt intervened. We think it should be yours, at least for right now. You have been the true guardian of this beautiful history. As the warm afternoon gave way to the cool dusk, the garden lights turned on automatically. They created a breathtaking golden glow among the olive trees. It was a complex system that Mike had personally installed. It was programmed to illuminate the paths and the oldest trees, perfectly highlighting their beauty in the dark. I stepped away from the busy celebration for a moment. I walked toward a stone bench at the very top of a small hill. From up there, I could clearly see the entire massive property. I saw the main house with all its brightly illuminated windows. I saw the greenhouse shining exactly like a delicate glass jewel. I saw the new gallery and the bustling educational center. And further out, I saw the gentle lights of Horizon Resorts, which complemented, rather than completely dominating the landscape. Haley finally found me up there. She brought 2 tall glasses of champagne. "Shall we make a toast?" she offered, sitting right down beside me. "What are we toasting to?" She thought for a brief moment, then smiled brightly. "To the broken promises that lead us exactly to where we truly need to be." We clinked our fragile glasses together very softly. "And to Mike," I added, because he somehow knew I would desperately need this place, this history, and this entirely new life, even when I did not know it myself. "I really think he is here somehow," Haley said quietly. She looked out toward the twinkling lights, the gathered people, and the beautiful art we had created together. Not as a haunting ghost, but as a vital part of all of this. He is in every single decision we make, and in every piece of new beauty we joyfully create. Sitting right there with my beautiful daughter by my side, contemplating exactly what we had built straight out of our pain and loss, I finally felt totally at peace. The huge house that Mike had begged me never to visit had become a holy sanctuary. It was a sanctuary not only for us, but for an entire creative community. The painful secrets he had kept had transformed into beautiful stories that actively inspired others. The promise he had forced me to make only to free me from it later had wonderfully led me to a bright future that neither of us could have ever imagined. In my coat pocket, I strongly felt the weight of Teresa's pocket watch. It represented 3 separate generations, connected through time by pure art, by fierce resistance, and by the sheer determination to boldly create beauty, even in the very darkest of moments. "Are you ready to head back down?" Haley asked after a little while. "They are serving dinner very soon. I think everyone is expecting you to say a few words." "Just give me one more moment," I replied. I breathed deeply the cool night air, beautifully perfumed with the sweet scent of ancient olive trees and blooming orchids. I am simply enjoying this magnificent view. As we slowly stood up to return to the grand celebration, I looked one final time at the beautiful property stretching out before us, brightly illuminated against the dark night sky. "You were completely right, Mike," I whispered so softly that Haley could not even hear me. This magical place was absolutely worth the broken promise. Did you enjoy my story today? What city are you watching from? Let us meet down in the comments section. If you truly enjoyed this story, you can support the channel by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing you more wonderful stories exactly like this one. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I am looking forward to reading all your thoughts about this story. On the screen right now, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend you watch next. There is so much more to discover on the channel. Do not forget to subscribe to our story family. I will see you all in the very next life story. With love and deep respect.